The wind never stopped blowing in Dead Elm. It hissed through the empty windows, stirred the ashes in the hearths, and whispered through the grass that grew wild over the graves on the hill. Every evening, when the sun bled out behind the mesas, Clara Vale climbed that hill with a lantern in her hand. They said she was mad, the undertaker's daughter who spoke to a ghost. But the truth was quieter than madness, and far more tragic. She had loved a man once. A drifter, a gunfighter with eyes like winter sky, Elias I. He came to Dead Elm with dust on his boots and a wanted poster folded in his coat pocket. And though she knew he was bound for trouble, she gave him her heart as if love could rewrite the law of the West. He died 3 years ago, or so the story went. Shot down in the canyon north of town, buried by a preacher who couldn't remember the words. But Clara swore she still heard his voice in the wind, calling her name from somewhere just out of sight. So she came every night to the graveyard, lantern flickering, her shawl drawn tight against the cold. She knelt by a crooked wooden cross and whispered as if he were sitting beside her. Her words were simple, pieces of a conversation that had never ended. I kept your horse fed, Elias. I fixed the gate. The roses bloomed this year. Then silence. Only the wind answering in sighs. The townsfolk had stopped trying to pull her away. They'd given up after she refused to leave the grave even in winter storms. They said a ghost could haunt the living, but sometimes it's the living who haunt the dead. On that night, the one this story remembers, the moon hung low, red as old blood. Clara's lantern burned weakly, its flame trembling like a frightened heart. And as she brushed the dust from the name carved into the wood, she saw something she had never seen before. Fresh ones. Leading up to the grave, and stopping right beside it. The ground was dry as bone. No rain had fallen in weeks. No one had come this way since she had last been here. And yet the prints were clear, boots, worn down at the heel, just like his. Her hand froze. The flame guttered. A whisper slid through the grass, soft, low, almost a voice. Clara? She turned, heart pounding, eyes wide into the darkness. No one stood there, only wind and moonlight. But the air felt colder than before, and for the first time in 3 years, she did not kneel to pray. She ran. And behind her, as her lantern fell into the grass, the flame did not die. It flared, once, bright as gold, as if lit by an unseen hand. Morning came pale and empty over Dead Elm. The light crept through boarded windows and over cracked streets where the wind had long since swept away the sound of laughter. Clara sat by the window of her father's undertaker shop, staring at the hill that loomed behind the town. Her father, old and bent, had given up speaking to her about letting go. Some griefs were not wounds, they were roots, sunk too deep to ever be pulled free. But this morning, something in Clara's chest stirred uneasy. She could still see those footprints in her mind, the way they ended by his grave and went no farther. By noon, dust clouds rose along the north road. A rider was coming. The few who still lingered in Dead Elm watched from behind shutters. Strangers brought trouble more often than not. He rode slow, slumped a little in the saddle as if carrying a memory heavier than his pack. His coat was worn, his hat shadowed his face, but Clara saw his boots first, scuffed at the heel. The same kind she had seen pressed into the dirt by the grave. He stopped outside the undertaker's door, swung down, and tied his horse to the post. Clara stood frozen behind the glass, her breath caught halfway between fear and disbelief. "Ma'am," he said when he saw her, his voice low, raw with the desert. "I'm looking for a man named Elias I." The world tilted a little then. Clara gripped the window frame. He's dead," she whispered. The stranger nodded, slow. "I heard as much. But I found this, up north, by a canyon where no man should have been buried." From his coat, he drew a silver pocket watch, tarnished, dented, but when he opened it, the inside shone bright as new. And on the inside lid, scratched in rough letters, "To Clara, until the wind forgets to blow." She pressed a hand to her mouth. Her heart hammered, wild and uneven. "That was his," she breathed. "I gave it to him the day before he rode out." The stranger looked at her for a long time, something haunted in his eyes. Then he said softly, "Then maybe he ain't as gone as they said." Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying with it a single echo, faint as breath but clear enough to chill the blood. It was a whistle, a tune only Elias I ever played. The stranger looked toward the hill. "You hear that?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered, "every night." The stranger glanced back at her, hat brim shadowing his face. "Then maybe," he said, "you're not the only one he's calling to." The lantern above the door flickered, though there was no flame in it, and somewhere in the distance, a single gunshot echoed, faint, far, and hollow as memory. That night, the wind came early. It swept down from the north like a restless spirit, lifting dust through the empty streets of Dead Elm. Clara sat by her window, lantern glowing soft on her desk, the silver watch lying open beside her. Its tick had long stopped, yet she swore it still kept time, not of hours but of memories. The stranger had left at dusk, saying only that he was heading toward the hill. He hadn't told her why. Something in his eyes said he already knew what he'd find there. When the clock struck midnight, Clara rose. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, took the lantern in hand, and stepped out into the wind. The air smelled of rain that would never fall. The stars above the desert shimmered faintly, as if watching. The path to the grave was known to her feet, each stone, each twist of grass. But tonight it felt different. The shadows deeper, the silence heavier. And when she reached the grave at last, she stopped short. The footprints were there again, fresh, pressed deep into the earth. But this time, something else lay at the base of the wooden cross, a corner of paper, half buried in dust. Clara set down the lantern and brushed the soil away. Her hands trembled. The paper was old, weathered, the ink faded brown. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was rough, uneven, but unmistakable. Elias Crow. She began to read, her breath shallow, her eyes filling as the words came alive under the flickering light. "Clara, if you're reading this, I reckon the world finally caught up to me. Don't waste your tears. I was never meant to stay, but I reckon my heart stayed with you all the same. They say a man's ghost lingers where you left something undone. Maybe that's why the wind won't let me go. Maybe I'm still out here, waiting for you to forgive me. If the wind ever whispers my name, don't be afraid. That's just me remembering." Her vision blurred. The letter fell from her hands, the edges fluttering in the wind. The lantern flame shook wildly, bending sideways, not from the breeze, but as if pulled. Then, through the wavering light, she saw him. A shape, faint, white, and still, standing just beyond the cross. Hat brim low, coat moving with the wind though the air around him was still. Her heart stopped. "Elias," she whispered. The shape did not move closer, but it raised a hand, slow, sorrowful, and pointed toward the base of the grave. Then it was gone. Clara dropped to her knees, digging at the earth where he had pointed. Her fingers found something cold, metal again. A bullet, blackened and old, wrapped in a scrap of cloth. She unwrapped it. On the cloth, faint letters stitched in her own hand. "Come home." The same cloth she had tied around his arm the day he rode away. The lantern flickered once more, and then went out. Darkness fell. But somewhere in it, a voice spoke, close as breath. "Clara. I'm almost home." Morning came gray and breathless, a sky heavy with clouds that never broke. Clara hadn't slept. She sat beside the cold lantern, Elias's letter spread open on her desk. The ink had run in places where her tears had fallen, turning his words into rivers. Outside, the wind had changed. It wasn't the ordinary wind that prowled Dead Elm. This one carried a rhythm, like breathing. Each gust seemed to murmur something almost spoken. At first she told herself it was only her mind echoing what she wished to hear. But when she whispered, "Elias," the air trembled, and answered. The voice came faint, threaded through the dust. Not clear enough for words, but warm enough to break her heart. She stood, trembling, and crossed to the window. The street below lay empty. Only tumbleweed rolled by, and the bell of the abandoned church clanged once, though there was no wind strong enough to move it. Her father stirred in the next room. He'd been sickly for months, pale as paper, quiet as a man already half a ghost himself. When he saw her standing there, his eyes filled with the same worry he'd carried since Elias died. "Child," he rasped, "you've got to stop chasing the dead. The dead don't love, and they don't come back." She turned toward him, the letter shaking in her hand. "What if he's not gone, Father? What if something's keeping him here?" He sighed, heavy and hollow. "Then let him rest. You keep calling to him, you'll lose yourself before he finds you." But it was already too late. Clara had lost herself 3 years ago, when the posse brought home a coffin too light to hold the man she loved. By sundown, she walked again toward the hill. The wind followed her, gentle at first, then stronger, swirling around her like invisible arms. The grass bent in ripples, moving with her steps, whispering her name over and over until it sounded almost human. When she reached the grave, she stopped short. Someone had been there. Fresh flowers, wild desert roses, lay across the mound. No one in Dead Elm grew them. They hadn't bloomed there since Elias's death. She knelt and touched the petals. They were cold, wet with morning dew. The wind sighed again, brushing her hair back like a lover's hand. "Elias," she whispered, "is that you?" The whisper came again, clearer this time, close to her ear. "I never left." Her lantern flared without a match, lighting on its own. She turned slowly, heart hammering. For a second, the shadows between the gravestones shimmered, and she saw him again, faint, flickering like heat over sand. He stood beside another grave, one she'd never noticed before. It bore no name, only a small cross burned into the wood. The flame bent toward it, as though drawn. The whisper returned, soft, pleading, almost human. "Find me, Clara, before the wind forgets." And then everything went still. The air, the light, even the sound of her breath. Only the scent of those desert roses remained, filling the silence with memory. The next day, the wind changed again. It blew hot from the south, carrying the smell of sage and old wood smoke, the kind that clings to places long forgotten. Clara walked through Dead Elm's main street, her shawl drawn tight though the sun still burned. Something inside her whispered that the answer wasn't on the hill anymore. It was down here, in the hollow heart of the town itself. The saloon had been empty since the fire 2 winters ago. The windows were boarded, the swinging doors hung by one hinge. Once, this place had been alive with piano music, laughter, the scrape of boots on the floor. Now, it was only dust and echoes. Clara pushed open the door. It groaned like something dying. The air inside was thick, dry, still, heavy with the smell of ashes. She lifted her lantern. The light caught on bottles that still stood behind the counter, their labels long faded. And then it touched a mirror. The mirror was cracked from one corner to the other, a long jagged scar through its middle. It had once been grand, silver-framed, imported from somewhere far east of here, but now it was clouded, warped, broken like the town itself. Clara stepped closer. Her own reflection wavered, twisted by the glass. Behind her, shadows stretched long across the floorboards. She whispered, barely a breath, "Elias." For a moment, nothing. Only the creak of the walls. Then, movement. Not behind her, but in the mirror. A figure stood there, tall, hat low, eyes like storm light. The same coat, the same worn boots. Her lantern shook in her hand. "Elias," she breathed. He lifted his head. The mirror shimmered as if it were water, rippling around his shape. His lips moved, forming words she could not hear. But when she pressed her fingers to the glass, she felt it, a pulse, faint as the beat of a heart through ice. Tears filled her eyes. "Why can't you cross?" she whispered. "Why are you still here?" The reflection moved closer. His hand lifted, palm to hers, but between them was only cold glass. Then, as she watched, his outline began to fade, not vanishing, but bleeding into the cracks of the mirror, like smoke seeping through shattered silver. The whisper came again, clear now, his voice low and sorrowful. "They buried me wrong, Clara. Find where the wind ends. Set me free." Her breath hitched. Where the wind ends. The mirror flashed white. A sudden burst of light that filled the room, then shattered. The glass exploded outward in 1,000 glittering shards, scattering across the floor like stars. When the light died, she was alone again. Only the smell of gunpowder and roses lingered. Clara dropped to her knees among the shards, one small piece catching the lantern's glow. In it, Elias's eyes still looked back at her, soft, sad, and waiting. She closed her hand around the shard until it cut her palm, a single drop of blood falling to the floorboards. The wind outside sighed through the broken door, carrying his words once more, "Where the wind ends." And with that, she knew what she had to do. That evening the sky burned dark red, the same color as the night Elias Crow had died. Dead Elm fell quiet under it, as if the town itself remembered. No one spoke of that night anymore, not since the fire that took half the buildings and nearly all the courage left in the living. Clara walked to the old church at the edge of town. Its bell hung silent, rusted through. The preacher, old Reverend Pike, still kept his post there, though he hadn't delivered a sermon in years. When he saw her shadow cross the doorway, He flinched, as if a ghost had come calling. "Miss Vale," he croaked. "You ought not come here after dark." She stepped forward, her voice calm but cold. "Tell me about the night Elias Crow died." The preacher's hand trembled around his cane. "Why drag up the dead, child? Some stories don't belong to daylight." "Then tell it in the dark," she said, her lantern casting gold over the faded pews. "I need the truth." For a long moment, the only sound was the rattle of the wind through the cracks in the roof. Finally, Reverend Pike sighed, the sound like a prayer that had long since lost its faith. It was 3 winters past. The moon was red, same as tonight. Crow was riding with the McCall gang, or so the sheriff said. They ambushed a stage near the canyon. He got shot through the chest. The sheriff wanted him left to the coyotes. Clara's breath caught. "But you buried him." "I tried." The preacher's eyes went distant. "But when I opened that coffin the next morning, it was empty. We thought the coyotes dragged him off. So I built him a cross on the hill anyway," said the words over an empty box. "Thought it'd keep his spirit quiet." Clara felt the world tilt beneath her. "Empty," she whispered. "He was never there." The preacher's gaze shifted to the window where the red moon hung heavy above the mesa. "There's talk he was taken. Some say the wind carried him. Some say the men who shot him buried him deep in the desert, where the wind dies out. No sound, no breath, no mercy." She turned toward the door, her mind spinning. "Where the wind ends." The phrase beat like a drum inside her chest. That's what Elias's ghost had told her. That's where his soul waited. "Which way?" she demanded. The preacher hesitated, then raised a trembling hand toward the horizon. "West," he whispered, "past the river that dried up. No one goes there, Clara. Even the wind won't cross that sand." Clara looked back once more, her lantern light flickering across the cross above the altar. "I will," she said. And as she stepped into the red night, the old bell above the church tower rang once, though no one touched the rope. The sound echoed across the desert, carrying far beyond the town, into the lonely places where even ghosts had forgotten their names. Clara mounted her horse as the red moon sank low, leaving the desert bathed in bruised twilight. The wind had shifted again, softer now, carrying a whisper that tugged her forward. She did not know where the road would end, only that it must. Where the wind ends. The town faded behind her, its broken windows and silent streets swallowed by dust. Every step her horse took kicked up dry particles that glittered faintly in the lantern light, like stars fallen to earth. Her shawl flapped against her shoulders, and in it she thought she heard a voice. "Clara?" The trail stretched for miles, winding between mesas that rose like ancient sentinels. The shadows lengthened, bending over the land in impossible shapes. Clara tightened her grip on the reins, heart hammering against her ribs, eyes fixed ahead. She passed the river that had dried years before, its cracked bed yawning like a wound across the desert. The wind sighed through the canyon, whispering over the stones as if remembering a story it had once told. There, on the far side, she saw it. A small mound of earth, untouched by time or weather. A grave. Plain, unmarked, yet somehow familiar. She dismounted, lantern held high, and stepped toward it. The sand beneath her boots was warm and dry. The air smelled faintly of smoke and roses. Elias's roses, the ones he had planted for her before he rode away. The wind began to pick up again, swirling around the mound. It carried a sound like breathing, slow, steady, patient. She fell to her knees, brushing sand from the earth. A chill ran through her, and the lantern flickered as though answering the rhythm of her heart. Clara dug with her hands, fingers scraping at the soil. At first, there was nothing. Then, a cold edge, metal beneath the sand. She uncovered a small chest, weathered but intact. Inside, folded neatly, were the things Elias had carried. His coat, a bundle of letters, and the pistol she had once helped clean for him. Tears streaked her face. He's here," she whispered. The wind swirled around her again, warmer now, almost comforting. And then she heard it clearly, a voice, soft and low, just as she had remembered. "Clara, I waited." Her hands shook as she held the letters. She knew, somehow, that she could touch him here, not the ghost, not the man who had been shot in the canyon, but the memory, the soul that lingered in this desert, waiting for her to find him. She pressed a hand to the chest, closing her eyes. The wind bent over her like a cloak, whispering through her hair, across her cheeks. She felt him near, close enough to almost hold, almost hear, almost speak. The night stretched around her, and in its silence, the wind carried a promise. You found me, Clara. And she knew her journey was only halfway done. To truly set him free, or to be lost to him forever, she would have to follow the wind beyond this place, past the desert sands, past the canyon walls, to the very edge of the world. The lantern trembled in her grip. Her horse shifted, snorting softly. And together, they rode west, into the darkness, into the whispering night, into the place where the wind ends. The desert night stretched endlessly before Clara, the lantern swinging at her side, throwing long shadows across the sand. The wind had grown colder, carrying the faint, bitter scent of iron and dust. Her horse moved carefully, wary of the uneven ground, as though even the animal sensed they were nearing a place of sorrow. Hours passed, and the horizon opened into a wide canyon. The moon cast silver over the cracked riverbed, revealing shapes that made her heart lurch. Bones. Hundreds, maybe thousands, scattered across the sand and rocks, glinting faintly in the lantern's glow. The river of bones, she whispered under her breath, recalling the name the wind had carried in echoes the townsfolk had once whispered. It was here that Elias had made his final stand. Here, where the bullets had flown and men had fallen, he had clung to life long enough to leave a piece of his soul for her. Clara dismounted and stepped into the shallow canyon bed, boots crunching on dry bones. The wind carried voices. Whispers of the past, the clang of rifles, the cries of men long dead. Her lantern illuminated a small patch of disturbed sand. She dug, hands trembling, and found it. A small locket, tarnished but intact. She opened it. Inside, a tiny portrait stared back at her, her own face, drawn in ink so fine it might have been touched by angel hands. A folded note slipped from beneath it. Clara, if you ever find this, know that my heart never left you. Even here, where men tried to take me from life, I carried you. The wind will guide you to me. Wait until it ends. Elias. Tears streamed down her face. She pressed the locket to her chest, feeling warmth bloom through her sorrow. He had loved her, even in death. The wind picked up, swirling through the canyon. It rattled the bones and sand, almost like laughter, almost like a sigh. And then she heard it clearly. Clara. She spun, heart hammering, and saw him. Not fully, not as a living man, but a shimmer of light, translucent, faint, yet undeniably him. He raised a hand, the gesture tender and familiar. Clara dropped to her knees, holding the locket high. Elias, I've found you, she cried. The ghostly figure bent slightly, reaching toward her, and the wind carried his voice. You always do, Clara, you always find me. For a moment, the desert was silent, the stars hanging heavy and watchful above them. And in that silence, Clara understood. He was here, not flesh, not blood, but memory, love, and longing. The wind had carried him, the sand had preserved him, and now she had found him. But the wind also whispered a warning, soft and chilling. I cannot stay, the world of the living cannot hold me. Follow the wind, Clara. Find where it ends, or we will be lost forever. Her hands tightened around the locket. She nodded, even though he could not see. I will, she said, voice firm. I'll follow you, Elias. I'll follow the wind to the end. And with that, the first pale light of dawn began to stretch across the canyon. The wind swirled around her, carrying with it the scent of roses, dust, and a promise she had waited 3 long years to hear. Night fell again, heavier than ever, wrapping the desert in velvet black. Clara guided her horse across the canyon floor, the locket clutched to her chest, the wind whipping around her like a living thing. Every gust carried whispers, fragments of voices, and the soft, haunting name, Clara. Ahead, the sand began to glow faintly, pale, ethereal, like moonlight reflected on water. Her horse shied, snorting, but Clara pressed on, heart pounding, breath shallow. The wind grew louder, carrying the scent of roses and iron, of life and death entwined. And then she saw him. Elias Crow stood in the center of the canyon, more real than ever, yet shimmering as though made of dust and moonlight. The wind bent around him, lifting his coat and hat, stirring his hair like a soft hand brushing her face. His eyes, storm blue, endless, met hers. Clara, he whispered, voice raw with longing, you came. She dropped from her horse, tears blinding her, and ran to him. Elias, I found you. I followed the wind, all the way here. He held out his hands, but she could feel the emptiness between them. Don't, he said softly. I cannot stay. Not here. Not in the world of the living. Clara pressed the locket to her lips. I don't care. I'll stay with you. I'll follow you anywhere. The ghost's face flickered, sadness and love intertwined. Clara, love like ours cannot bind a spirit. I am yours, and yet not yours. The wind carried me to you, but it will carry me away if I linger. The desert fell silent. Only the whispering sand moved, circling around them, as if the earth itself held its breath. I don't want to lose you, Clara whispered. He stepped closer, and for a fleeting moment, she could feel warmth, a pulse like a living heart, the memory of his flesh brushing hers. I will always be with you, he said, even when I am gone. You must let me go, Clara. Only then can you live, and only then will I rest. Clara's hands shook, but she understood. The wind swirled violently, lifting sand into spirals around them. The locket glowed in her palm, pulsing once, twice, like a heartbeat. I love you, she said, voice breaking. And I will never forget you. Elias smiled, the light of him soft and fading. And you, he whispered. Then the wind took him. Not with a scream, not with violence, but like a sigh slipping through her fingers. The shimmer, the warmth, the storm-blue eyes, all gone, leaving only the echo of his voice in the wind. Follow the wind, Clara, always. She sank to her knees in the desert, tears cutting through the dust on her cheeks. The locket lay warm in her hand, the letters inside rustling softly. The wind, now gentle, circled her once more, and then it was quiet, leaving her alone beneath the stars. Clara understood. He was gone, but not lost. He would live in her heart, in the stories the wind would carry, in the memory of love that could not die. And as she stood, lantern swinging, hair whipping in the desert breeze, she felt him everywhere. In the rustling sand, in the scent of roses, in the whispering wind. Eternal. Clara walked back to Dead Elm at first light, the desert stretching endless and quiet behind her. The wind had softened, brushing over the sand like a gentle hand, carrying no whispers now, only memory. Her horse trailed beside her, hooves leaving soft prints in the pale morning dust. The town looked smaller than she remembered, its broken windows and crumbling roofs dwarfed by the open sky. She passed the old church, its bell silent, and the empty saloon, mirrors cracked and floors creaking. The streets were empty, as they always had been, but she felt him everywhere, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but as a presence stitched into the land itself. Clara returned to her small home on the hill, carrying the locket and letters that had survived time, fire, and desert winds. She placed them carefully on the mantel beside the old lantern. The light caught the silver of the locket, and for a moment, it glimmered as though Elias himself were smiling at her. The wind stirred the curtains, whispering through the room, and she felt his touch one last time, a brush of air over her cheek, soft, fleeting, and impossibly tender. Clara sat by the window, gazing out at the grave on the hill, the wooden cross leaning slightly in the morning light. Her heart ached with the weight of love lost, yet somehow, it felt full. He had been taken from her, yes, by men, by bullets, by death itself. But he had waited, and she had found him, even if only for a moment. She thought of the river of bones, the cracked canyon, the desert where he had rested, and she understood that love did not end with life. It lingered in memory, in wind and sand, in small gestures that outlasted time. The wind through Dead Elm was gentler now, carrying a soft refrain of his voice. Follow the wind, Clara, always. Clara closed her eyes. She whispered back, a vow to the empty air, to the ghost, to the man she had loved more than life itself. I will, Elias. Always. The sun rose higher, burning away the shadows of the night, gilding the ruins of Dead Elm with light. And though the town remained quiet, even hollow, the legend of Clara Vale spread silently in the breeze. Travelers would pass by, feel a strange chill, and hear a whisper in the wind, of a girl who loved a ghost, of a heart that refused to let go, of a love that even death could not claim. Clara never left the town again. She kept her vigil by the hill, tending the grave, reading the letters, and listening to the wind. Every night, when the moon hung red over the mesas, she felt him near, a presence in the shadows, a warmth in the chill. And though she never saw him as he had been in life, she knew he was with her, carried forever by the wind, in the heart of the girl who loved a ghost. The desert whispered his name, and she whispered back. The story ended not with a reunion of flesh, but with a love eternal, fragile, haunting, and true. A love that would ride the wind forever,